give it back.
Europa.
Hey! We're recording the podcast! Shut up!
Good morning, wherever you are, because it is
Morning Somewhere!
for September 9th, 2024. I was so far late on that one.
You're fine. It's,
I feel like
it's Monday. We're just doing what we can here.
Hey, everybody, I'm Bernie, sitting right over there. She's not going to be saying much today. It's Ashley. Say hi to Ashley, everybody.
Hey, I do have a little bit of a cold, so this might be both a shorter episode and one featuring everyone's favorite Bernie, more than average.
Everyone's favorite. I don't know if I am everyone's favorite Bernie. Again, Bernie Sanders has been pretty quiet in this political.
Oh, right. I meant with a U.
Bernie with a U. Our dictation or our transcription software refuses to recognize that.
So do a lot of people on Twitter, if I remember correctly from the last election.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, maybe that's why I feel like he's been quiet. Also because I haven't been on Twitter in forever. But during the last election.
He's embarrassed that people keep tweeting you.
Was it? No, it wasn't last election. It was
2016?
2016 when Clinton was running against Trump. And people would just suddenly, like, some random person from some Midwestern suburb would just write to me and go, Bernie, your ego is ruining this country. And I was like, what did I say on the podcast this week? And I go look at, they don't mean me. They mean Bernie Sanders. And they just tag me.
I mean, look, they're not wrong. They're not wrong. But it was perhaps misdirected.
Yeah, they're just off. Like, they don't, it's an offset. It's the right conclusion, just the wrong path that got there. That's all. All right. How's everybody doing? It's Monday. I don't know if you can tell, and I don't know if she wants me to call it out, but here we are in the middle of the conversation. Ashley's not feeling that well.
I think I already said that. I got a bit of a cold, so I'm a little bit froggy.
I had it last week, and I attacked it. We had some people come visit us. They were plague victims. They came and infected our house.
Only because
slowly it's worked its way through the house.
They went on a Scottish adventure called the NC 500. So my sister's husband is very big into cycling, and I made the mistake last time they'd visited of telling them about the NC 500, which is a 500-mile track essentially around the northern Highland coast of Scotland. And because he's insane, he thought, that sounds fun.
Yep.
And so they came over, a couple of friends. These are the kind of people who bring their own bikes on planes.
Yeah, you had a lot of crazy friends, too.
Yes.
Thought, we'll get on a plane, go to a different country, and do this horrible event.
For fun.
Let's just do it.
And so they spent 5 days cycling the NC 500. They had a great time. They got back to our house, and immediately everyone got sick. And then the rest of us started falling like dominoes. It's like the zombie plague.
Yeah, but who can you blame, though? Because unless you got it directly from a person, then how far back does it go, right? Because it's the first person you know about with the sickness. Are they to blame? Because I don't think I got it from any of them. I think I got it from Finn, but I think Finn got it from them.
I would agree with you. I think we both got it from Finn, who got it from them.
But the moment I started to feel a little bit off, I've said this before, but because I played church in Red versus Blue, whenever I get even slightly sick, my voice goes. So I was like, I'm not doing it, because if I lose my voice for 3 or 4 days, I'll have to put up with comments going, Bernie sound weird today? So you might have noticed it like last Tuesday. If you go back and listen to last Tuesday's podcast, or maybe it was Wednesday. I don't know. I've lost all track of time because of the illness. But I attacked it. I loaded up on vitamin D, loaded up on vitamin C, and you gave me the day off, and I just got to go no responsibilities, just rest.
You hibernated.
I didn't let it establish itself inside of me. It made like a push, and I was like, all right, the walls have been breached. Let's attack. Let's get it. And I got it. And so I had it for I'd say 18 hours. I probably had it.
It's too late for me. I feel like I've solidly got it. However, aside from the congestion, it's not really all that miserable experience. And I have to admit, I always find cold, husky voice. I'm like, man, I wish I had a husky voice all the time. There's something I find tremendously sexy about husky female voices.
I agree with that.
And I just don't have it except when I'm sick. And so I just revel in this time where I've got a little bit of extra gravel. I've got that gravitas.
I will say people tend to fall in one of two camps when they're sick. In one camp, I would call that the camp that I'm in. When I get sick, I'm like, stay the fuck away from me. I'm sick. I'm going to go here. I'm just going in my room and you won't see me. Like when the first time we got COVID, it was like I had Ebola. Like I had a hall and I went to the bedroom at the end of that hall and I put a table in the hallway.
Yeah,
Don't come down this hallway.
Like a little desk, and I would leave you food on this table. And after I left the food, you would come get the food, and then you would take it back to your room. I didn't see you for a solid, 2 weeks while you just hibernated in this room. I hope that you wrote.
That was also COVID.
I'm hoping that you wrote your magnum opus during that 2 weeks.
I didn't give you COVID. Isn't that enough of a gift? Isn't that enough? That's the camp I'm in. So I went away for it was only last week. It was only a day. But a day when you've got 2 little kids running around, that's a day. You learn how many minutes are in every single day.
You really do.
You learn there's an infinite amount of opportunities for meltdowns in there. The other camp that people fall in is they refuse to acknowledge that they're sick. Like they're pale, their eyes are red, eyes are watering. They're all congested. It's only just blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, man, are you sick? And they're like, no, it's just allergies. What is that? Are they afraid we're going to drag them out into the front lawn and shoot them or something like that? I don't get why people are like that.
You know what I think it is? I think it's a fear that if you let it stop you, if you take a break, all these things that you're worried about aren't going to get done. And so you're like, I got to get these things done. I have to. If I don't, it all falls apart.
Yes. They don't want anyone to know that they're sick. And as a result, they make everybody else sick. That's what I think. It's usually somebody at work. I'm always thinking about that.
Or people downplaying it. It's not a malicious thing, but I think it is people who are worried that if they let this stop them, there's all these things and they got to get the things done.
You know who doesn't fuck around with that?
Who?
Production people at all. Have you noticed that?
I have.
Like if someone's sick, they're like, are you sick? Get the fuck, what are you doing? Get out of here. Like they do not mess around with it. Every other office job or even restaurants and stuff where I've worked, people are like, no, man, I'm sick. I got to power through this. What am I going to do? Waste a day off and go home kind of a thing? I always found maybe it's because production people tend to be like, they're constantly confronting problems, everybody on a production crew.
And you're like, don't you make an extra problem. Not dealing with that right now.
No, this is and we know what a delay means to all of us. So no, you get the hell out of here. Go take care of yourself. I mean, it's not rude, but it's very stern of you do not come here when you're sick.
Yeah, it's also, I think industry by industry, there's always small variances. It's interesting that that's one in production because as non-salary workers, you think that production people would be more likely to come to work sick because it's not like they get vacation days. They don't get sick days.
Yeah. It's but also it's usually people in production are going, when this gig is over, I need to be ready for the next gig that I already have lined up, hopefully. Not these days, because the movie industry is just man, everything I'm hearing from people is just it's brutal.
It just hasn't quite recovered.
I have two segues to go here. So do I go to box office or do I go down the crazy people who do marathon things?
Okay, let's hit box office and then we'll come back to the crazy
Yeah, it's a short
marathoners.
discussion. So this is something I've never really seen before. First of all, Beetlejuice, the sequel to Beetlejuice.
Well, now you're in trouble, Bernie.
Oh, right. Sorry about that. Sorry. It made $110 million at the box office.
Well, interestingly, that's the North American numbers. So I learned via the box office numbers that Beetlejuice is apparently a very American franchise. I mean, I guess now it's a franchise. Before it was just a movie. Now it's a franchise.
Well, I think spooky spirit myth stuff tends to be very country specific. What's the game that's huge in China that you don't really hear about outside of China besides how big it is?
Oh, Black Myth Wukong, I think.
And that's based in myth and legend, right?
It is,
Yeah.
but I would go even so far as to say in this case, it's a Halloween movie. And America loves Halloween.
That's true.
There's good Halloween here. We're able to take the kids trick-or-treating and stuff, but it is not on the level of suburban block parties in the U.S. At least in where we were in Texas, there were these neighborhoods you could go to that threw full-on block parties for Halloween. We have a friend who is decorating for Halloween right now because she's got some travel coming up, so she's going to miss a week of decorating time. So she's decorating her house for Halloween now.
It's Becca, by the way.
It's Becca.
Yeah, I don't think we're revealing anything there. Becca loves Halloween. She decorates the hell out of her house for Halloween. I think she does it right, though. You decorate your house, and then the kids come to the house. That's, to me, the traditional Halloween thing. What you're talking about and some people really like it, but to me, it's not what Halloween's about. They bring, in these suburban neighborhoods, JD and Teddy grew up in one of these. We had a cul-de-sac. All the parents, the young parents in their late 20s, early 30s, they're like, Halloween's so great, and they want to be part of it. So they all bring folding tables out to the end of the driveway and make stations for the kids. I don't like that as much. To me, it's going up to the door and knocking and saying trick or treat. It's almost like in America, it's like a kid's first introduction to performing or public speaking because they have a line they have to say and there's a thing they're supposed to do. And it's like
There's a ritual to the whole thing.
It's a ritual. There you go. It's a ritual. And so I don't like when adults are constantly inserting themselves into kids' stuff. And it's just like, just stay in your house with the bowl of candy.
There is an interesting thing about Halloween here that we learned, was it last year when we took Finn trick-or-treating? And that is, there is a tradition here when you knock on the door, the kid has to tell a joke.
Yes.
So Finn's joke was, what kind of a road do ghosts live on? And the answer is a dead end. And everyone would go, ha, 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 ha. And they would give him his treat and he would go.
Oh, I just got that. No, just kidding.
And he was so happy and so proud of himself, right? And that's a fun little thing, I think, that sort of adds to it, to the sort of, the sort of trick or treat, I don't know, vibe to it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I would agree with you that the block party is definitely adultifying the kids' holiday a little bit.
Like, we didn't talk about this story, but did you read about this couple that's spending hundreds of thousands of dollars? Please explain this to me. To sue Disneyland or Disney World to get back into a Disney club?
Okay, so yes.
Like a
yes,
like an Admiral's Lounge, but for Disney?
It's called, I believe it's called Club 33 or something like that. It's incredibly exclusive. You end up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to even qualify for this thing. And there's these exorbitant annual fees. And it's basically like the country club for Disney people, right? It's like this very like high-end club thing for adults. And this couple got kicked out. They said that they'd had one incident before where the wife had been warned for using inappropriate language.
This is all alleged by the park.
Is still a Disney thing. And then eventually they kicked them out because they said that the husband was drunk and slurring his speech and all this. And so they booted them from the club and from club membership. This couple has now spent, according to them, like $400,000 in legal fees trying to sue Disney to force them to let them back into this club. They said they went hundreds of times a year. It was the center of their
I read
social life. They would bring friends
80
in.
and 100 times a year they would go to the park. It's like once every 3 days.
Like there are Disney adults and then there are these people. I believe we heard about it because they lost the lawsuit.
I personally love when I hear about something that is incredibly exclusive and very expensive that I want nothing to do with. I feel like I've saved so much time and money because I would not ever want to be dragged to this place, whatever this club is. And to hear that like people are spending so much money to get into it, I'm like, I feel like I just saved a ton of money. I feel like I saved hundreds of thousands of dollars by not being interested in this at all. I learned that here too. Like,
it's a huge savings.
I was just driving my car around and a couple different people said to me, you should get a personalized license plate. And I said, really?
You
a
can
personalized
do,
license plate?
You can do that because we think of the personalized license plates in the US where you can have like fun girl.
Exactly. That's not the way it is in the UK. The UK, it's just like, what's a personalized license plate? It's like, well, there's a guy. I'm just going to make up letters here because I'm just making this up.
We're not doxing anyone here.
Yeah, don't look this up. Just making up a pair of letters here. Like there's a guy who's got his license plate his registration plate is X5. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? It's like, well, it's just an X and a 5. And I'm like, okay, was that okay? Great. And they're like, that's really rare to have one that's just 2 digits. And I'm like,
okay, but
great.
What does that spell out?
What does it spell? It's like, well, it's just, you know how much they probably paid for that? I said, no, how much? They said, I think like 150,000 pounds. I'm like, what? It's really, it's one of those things where it's valuable because it's expensive. Does that make sense? And people know it's expensive and therefore it's valuable and people aspire to have it. But if someone who comes from outside the culture and doesn't have that built in, you're like, that's an incredible waste of money to spend that to have a thing that just says X5 on it or whatever. And my apologies to whoever has the X5 plate, you rich brick.
So once again, this is another case where we save big bucks by just being clueless.
Not giving a shit or just being completely ignorant of it. All right, let's loop this back around to crazy people doing crazy stuff and doing marathons and whatnot.
Yes. So.
Oh, wait. I was going to say the crazy thing to me about the box office this week.
Okay, go ahead.
I like we're going to do like a short little blurb about the box office and somehow went down a rabbit hole.
We keep doing that.
Beetlejuice made $110 million according to boxofficemojo.com.
Domestically, and then internationally made $35.4 million. So its global tally for its opening weekend is $145 million.
But according to Box Office Mojo, which is all domestic, it's $110,000. Second place, this is interesting. Second place to $110 million is Deadpool and Wolverine, $7 million.
Whoa, that's a big gap.
So I don't recall ever seeing that big of a gap between number 1 and number 2. So 110. In fact, I don't know that the rest of the domestic American box office combined even gets to half of what Beetlejuice made in its weekend.
Well, I think a couple of things are really helping Beetlejuice. One, it's reviewing pretty well. People say that it's a lot of fun. 2, it gets to play on nostalgia. It's got a lot of the original cast. But 3, it's going to pull in a lot of the young audience who really like Jenna Ortega and who liked Wednesday and that kind of thing. So it kind of has a lot of ingredients to get a lot of people on board. And of course, it is the movie opening Halloween season in the U.S. So it's got a lot in its favor.
Here's a crazy thing too. Seeking Mavis Beacon, is that the lady who teaches you how to type?
Are they looking for her?
Re-examines the legacy of one of the most influential black women in technology. Did Mavis Beacon have like a dark history? Is she like a cold case?
I don't know.
This is crazy.
Apparently, we need to watch this.
Mavis Beacon. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna look into that further. But I was gonna say that something that stands out to me is really down on the box office list. We talked previously about Coraline having a 15th anniversary re-release. Shaun of the Dead also has had a celebratory re-release. It did $31,000 at the box office in its second weekend. It did $150 per theater that it was in.
Did they forget to tell people they were doing a re-release? Because I love Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, I guess so.
And again, keeping with the sort of opening of the Halloween season, a fun rom-com zom. Or no, they called it the Zom rom-com. I can't remember the order.
Is that what they called it?
Yes, it's a zombie romantic comedy.
I love Shaun of the Dead, and I did not hear anything about this. I also didn't know about the Coraline re-release, and that's done really well. Like it's still plugging along at like number 15 this week. So it did $31 million so far, the re-release.
Nice work, Coraline.
Yeah, so anyway, so that was the box office, but I was shocked to see how much Beetlejuice did above the number 2 movie, which, by the way, is Deadpool versus Wolverine. If you compare it to the other new releases this week, and we are out of the summer season, number 10 is the next new release. That's The Front Room, and it did $1.6 million. A24 movie. Okay, back to marathons and weirdos who do marathons. I should say weirdos when we lead into this.
We're talking about ultra dedicated athletes.
There we go.
How about that?
Thank you. That deserve our respect. Very sad story out of the Paralympics. Runner who won bronze in, I don't know if there's special categories. Are there different marathons for different categories? She's visually impaired.
Yeah, she was a Paralympic marathon runner. This is Elena Kongost. She was running a marathon, and she basically had to hold the rope of her guide, who was like guiding her through the course.
Yes.
Right towards the end, her guide got a cramp, so she briefly let go of the rope to help her guide up and basically hold him up. They crossed the finish line, and she was disqualified for letting go of the rope.
And it's crazy to me to think about that. It's like you never think about the person next to them doing all this, who just basically guides them. They have a rope. The athlete holds the rope. This person got a cramp, the guide, which hampers her. She stops to help him and hold him up, thus letting go of the rope, which disqualifies her, and now she has to give back her bronze medal.
Yes, so she has lost the bronze, but did the right thing, right? Like, I mean,
did a normal thing.
Did a normal thing in that she could have just like stopped in place and kept holding the rope until guide sorted himself out, right?
Right.
But
starts dragging him by the rope. Just like, you hold on, I'll pull.
Hold on, buddy. But did, like the human thing was like, help your guide up. And keep in mind as well that she's visually impaired, so she may not even have a full idea exactly where they're at or what's happening, but it was 10 meters from the finish line.
I also want to point out, this is its own penalty. This slowed her down.
Yes,
right,
absolutely.
and she still got a bronze. She still got the bronze. Well, got the time to get the bronze, and then it was taken away from her. And she's very saddened by it. She couldn't believe it, but it's one of these things you keep hearing about where, yes, it's a rule. Yes, we understand. But I just I don't know, every time I hear a story about these Olympic committees and the decisions they make, who are these people, Ashley? I feel like the Olympic Committee is the HOA of sports. They're just like, I get it's a rule, but they don't seem to show any remorse about it either. They're just like, hey, it's a rule. What are you going to do? Are you going to change the rule? Nah, it'll probably never come up again. You know, that kind of thing. It's just like, I don't understand who these people are.
It does feel like it's a weird sort of bureaucracy. And another thing with a lot of it too is that they sort of like the individual sports have their like overseeing committees, right? That are, you know, based on the sort of like, here's like the, you know, international, I don't know, running authority or whatever it is, have their own group as opposed to like the swimming guys and so on and so forth. And so a lot of times they feel weirdly inconsistent because each sport decides its own exceptions and its own rules. Do you remember during the Olympics, this Olympics was with the snafu with the gymnasts where like someone appealed their score, but then it turns out they did it 4 seconds too late, so now they're taking this back, and it was like this really like ridiculous bureaucracy that just really hurt the athletes.
And I feel like the Olympic committees, they don't feel like they're former athletes, which at this point, it should be entirely former athletes who understand the sport and can make a judgment based on it, or coaches or something. This is total speculation. It just feels like a bunch of like rich people enthusiasts who somehow get like these diplomat positions. Every time I hear about them, I'm like, who the fuck are you? Why are you qualified to do this in any way, shape, or form? Because it's just insane to me. Like, and then you always hear about the other athletes weighing in going, I can't believe that they got this. And then they always have to interview the person who ended up with the medal. And they're like, I'm just really happy I was there to compete. Like, they can't say anything because they have the medal now. You know what I mean? What are they going to do?
Yeah, it's it is a painful thing for sort of everyone involved, the bureaucracy. Although I do understand rules exist for
I understand
a reason,
it too.
but there's got to be a human element to rules at some point, right?
There's got to be a human element at some point. Like, what was it? Why not just make everything when it happens, it goes under investigation, right? And the guideline is in most cases, it should lead to a disqualification. And they would say, like, this is clearly a case where it's not. I get it. It's sport. I get it. But it's not like she stepped out of bounds. It's not like she stepped on a fault line or something like that.
She didn't run off without her guide.
Yeah.
You know, it was very clearly, it was the following the letter of the law, but not necessarily the spirit.
Also, it's like, you know, the guide too. It's like, I've seen some of these runners at the end of some of these races. I've seen them on television where it's just like sometimes their bodies just completely shut down. I understand that completely. And it's like this guy who's helping out a Paralympian, you know, and says, I'll race with you. And then it's like, he's the reason she lost. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just stating it's like he got a cramp and that happens, but that's what ended up hindering her. Now she loses her medal as a result.
Well, so even if she doesn't get the medal, she does get our Paralympian of the day. That's Elena Kongost, the Paralympian marathoner.
And, you know, he's trying to do a nice thing, I assume. And then it's just like, shit, now he's got to feel bad for the rest of his fucking life about this, you know? I guess they're athletes, though, at a really high level. They walk it off, I guess. I don't know. But it does make me wonder, too, about the Paralympics, and I need to look at this. There's two things I want to do some homework on this week. I want to study the negative effects of deflation, because deflation is starting to work its way into all the financial news. China is going through a massive deflation crisis right now. And I've always, seen inflation as like the devaluing of money, but deflation is where the money just buys more and more. It actually can cause this massive spiral that there's no mechanism really to get out of. Because essentially, if your money is continuing to deflate, as the prices deflate, right, and prices are going down and everything, your money's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. If the projection is that that's going to continue, people stop spending because it doesn't make sense to spend it in January if it's going to be worth more in May. Does that make sense?
It does.
And they can't really fight it the way they can fight other things because they can get into things like negative interest rates, but then that just causes people to pull money out of the bank because they're losing money keeping their money in the bank. You see how that would be a bad thing?
I do.
And so it turns into a spiral where you just, even if you give people money, like create money and give it to people, they'll still hold on to it knowing it's going to be better to spend it in a month or whatever. So it can be one of these incredibly difficult things to get out of. And now it's like, it's just our modern times. We spent so many years now talking about inflation, and now it's like, but if we had into deflation, that's way worse than this. It's like, okay, great. So I'm looking into that, and I want to look into the Paralympics. We tend to think of like different events. Like Murder Ball is wheelchair rugby, and that is, it includes the sport and it includes the disability. Is that okay? Is that a disability?
To some degree. There's various different sort of like additions is the wrong word, but I'm apologize for my cold brain. I'm not thinking of all the words right now. But different like additions of some of the sports. Like I've seen as well sitting volleyball. Or
Right.
there'll be
But like a marathon.
Yes.
Are the people who is having visual impairment, like the athlete we were just talking about, is she in a different race than the people who have a physical, like they're missing a limb or a leg? Is that a different category? Is it a different race? Do they race in the same race and they're just in different categories within the same race? That's what I don't know about the Paralympics. Because they would have to have like 8 billion events if they had every different variation of every sport and every different ability. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I don't know how they do it from like an execution standpoint. I do know that she was in like the T12 category for the marathon. So I don't know if they're all sort of doing it at the same time, but in different divisions, or if they do them as entirely separate events. I don't know enough.
And
about
that's the
that.
great thing about these big global events. They highlight things that people aren't aware of, and they give everyone a chance to learn about it, right? So
Right.
I'm gonna go read about that today and see like how do they have the classifications for that. And there certainly must be classifications for different sports where there could be potentially a different ability that doesn't affect the ability to do that sport. So they just wouldn't have that classification for that sport.
Yeah,
I
that
can't
makes
think of
sense.
anybody any of those off the top of my head, but there must be some categories like that where they're just like, it's not enough of a different ability to qualify to be a special category for that sport.
Well, speaking of qualifying, Bernie, for special categories, you know, the Emmy, the Creative Arts Emmys were last night. I believe the Primetime Emmys are next week. But apparently, just since this was happening last night, it's very relevant at the moment. The Bear like broke records for the number of awards.
We gotta watch this show.
I know we need to watch this show.
I thought Shogun won.
I'm sorry. It was Shogun that broke the record. Bear took, of course, a whole bunch of. I believe they had like a lot of the special guest stars. They had one for. I think it was Jamie Lee Curtis. And let's see, and John Bernthal. And then also
Barenthal.
Is it Barenthal? Oh, is it? Is he
Berenstain.
Berenstain? But one that I wanted to shout out is actually that we now have 2 new members of the EGOT Club. Specifically, this is Benj Jasic and Justin Paul, because they did original music for the season 3 of Only Murders in the Building, which, if you're not familiar with it, one of the characters in Only Murders is like a theater director. And so this 3rd season sort of takes place around a show that he is making. So it's a show within a show, and they made like a full musical in the show. And this is a patter song that's actually, bro, it gets stuck in your head. I'm going to tell you what. So they won an Emmy, so they've now rounded out their EGOT.
I'm telling these musicians, they have an inside track to this EGOT.
Well,
they really do.
They're also a multi-Grammy because they had a Greatest Showman as well, and multiple Tony because they were producers on A Strange Loop. So they're like, they've been waiting to pull in this Emmy and just round out their awards.
Well, in a very smooth segue to our last segment, Elon Musk.
Wait, he's going for an EGOT?
He got a lot of the satellites up in space. And SpaceX has now said they dominate the space. Starlink satellites now account for 2/3 of all active satellites.
Look, I really like SpaceX in general. It seems like I like a lot of Musk's properties that he has less to do with.
It
than
seems like
other
a
ones.
Bond villain plan in action.
It does. I'm a little bit concerned that any company owned by Elon Musk talks about dominating space.
It's free speech, Ashley.
Look, do you guys have a safe word?
Our safe word is giant meteor. It is now, Elon Musk SpaceX has achieved a significant milestone with the successful launch of its 7,000th Starlink satellite. On their way, we should point out, to 42,000 estimated Starlink satellites in orbit.
So they're saying that they now have, they basically control 2/3 of all satellites that are in orbit. If they are heading for that 40,000 plus, that's going to put them, I mean, I'm bad at math, but 90% sounds right.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of satellites that they've got. So 2/3. So if they've got 2/3 of the satellites at 7,000, that means there's 3,500, right, other satellites out there. And if they get up to 42,000, you nailed it.
I was pretty good at that.
Yeah, not bad at all, babe. Not bad at all.
Yeah, I was
they'd have
just
even
noodling
more,
on that one.
They would have even more than that. That's crazy to me. It'd be like Beetlejuice to Deadpool versus Wolverine. It'd be like a 10x drop to get to the second place category. It's crazy. So it's just something to be aware of. I don't really know what we do about that, but I think other people are going to start to launch other satellites as well. I'm curious as well, like what do they do to get these things out? They must have a plan in place to get these satellites out of orbit. They must.
They just degrade and then they, fall in the ocean mostly.
Ashley, this is a space organization. They wouldn't just launch things into orbit without a plan of how to get them back down to Earth, would they?
You say that, but just to finish off, we mentioned this briefly on Friday. The Starliner has returned to Earth unmanned.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing that it landed, and it's a good thing that it landed without a major event.
Yes. Apparently there was a fault with a thruster. They did have a redundancy in place, so everything was fine. You have to wonder a little bit for the astronauts now if they're like, oh man, I could be home right now.
No,
if they're like, no, I'm fine. I'm up here.
They'll be back soon enough, and we'll be able to say thank you for your service. Speaking of which, who are we thanking for making this podcast today, Ashley?
Well, we're throwing a parade for Hunter Clark and Darko. Thank you both for sponsoring this episode of our show at patreon.com/morning somewhere.
Your money will be used to begin the Morning Somewhere satellite armada that we're going to be developing for 2028. So thank you very much for your contribution.
We're not really aiming to dominate space, though. We kind of want to sub to space.
Speak for yourself.
Give us some flexibility here.
Be dominating the fuck out of it. All right, well, that does it for us today, September 9th, 2024. We will be back to talk to you tomorrow. We hope you will be here as well.
Bye, everybody.